Hi everyone, Dennis from STP here with another short video, this time talking about a general overview of what I've been calling the STP Stack. On the left you'll see a list of 4 names in colored boxes. These are 4 major thinkers that are foundational to what we do. One of our goals in STP is to provide theoretical tools for rethinking our conjuncture, which just means the set of political problems that confront us all today. The elements of this set are related in highly non-trivial ways. And this is a tall order because A, we're not geniuses, B, political problems go very deep and involve many different scales of analysis, and C, anything we produce in terms of theory is going to be colored by our particular circumstances, and that is unavoidable. But on top of all of that, we're just regular people with jobs and school. We're affected by what happens in the world, and we must continually struggle to find time to work on these problems, mostly outside of the academy. Fortunately for us, there are geniuses in the history of leftist thinking that we can borrow from. In our case, we've chosen these 4 to build a framework around. But this is by no means an exhaustive list of thinkers we admire or are inspired by or make productive use of. If you look through the over 100 videos on our channel and website, you'll see that we draw from many traditions and thinkers, and there's hardly any consensus between us when it comes to theory. That is, I think, a feature and not a bug of how we're structured. The point is not to create a consensus between all traditions of leftist thought. We're not saying that everyone is compatible with everyone, nor is it to formulate some ultimate theory of society, but to find tools that work well together and yield productive exchanges with the various social movements and organizations that exist today. For more on that, please watch our recent video on the common space of organizations. The point of what we do is not the theory we produce, but to enable working with others, so that projects like CSO can happen. An inevitable aspect of working with others is going to be intermixing and revising the theory on the left. And we believe that these 4 thinkers give us some good tools to do all of that. So let's talk about the stack. One way to read this is that, roughly speaking, the top is the most specific and the bottom is the most general. Another way to see it is as successive generalizations, as depicted by this terrible drawing. Marx gives us tools to think about a very specific historical situation, the one we're in today, called the capitalist social world. Marx is also an interesting figure because as soon as you invoke him, you have entered into a very divisive and diverse field of inquiry. This is a good thing, often in the guise of a bad thing, because behind all of the apparent disagreements of the left around the legacy of Marx and Marxism, there is a generative force, a novelty to his thinking that is continually renewed. In our case, we use Marx to understand the logic that encompasses commodities, value, surplus value, and so on. And we use him as a litmus test for how robust our analysis is. After Marx on the stack is Karatani, who is himself Marxist and who provides a theory of change at the world level in such a way as to highlight different social logics besides the one that Marx focuses on. Note that Marx himself has a periodization of history as well, based on what he calls the dialectic between the forces and relations of production. Karatani addresses this in the Structure of World History, and in that book he compares his approach to Marx. But basically for us, the benefits of connecting Marx's theory of capitalism to a theory of the social terrain in general outweighs what you get from strictly adopting Marx's periodization. So I'm about to talk about how STP builds a bridge between Marx and Karatani, so I'll return to this topic later. Next in the list is Bogdanov, the perhaps lesser known co-founder of the Bolshevik Party along with Lenin, who was then ousted by Lenin for being too idealist. In particular, we're interested in his work on what he termed techtology, or universal science of organization. This concept is often acknowledged as a forerunner to cybernetics, but we think it's a significant generalization and much deeper than cybernetics, because it's not only about social control, but also includes a political component. For Bogdanov, all sciences are branches of technology, including socialism or scientific socialism itself. Bogdanov envisioned that communism would finally allow humanity to stop fighting itself via the class struggle and focus its energy on the real fight, which is against nature. In light of the rising awareness of the Anthropocene, he seems quite ahead of his time. But note that his idea wasn't for humanity to become a master over nature as much as to learn from it, since it is the greatest organizer of all. He saw nature as humanity's greatest teacher, and all sciences as drawing from that original source. Technology enables the transit of ideas between these various branches. And for us, there's this nice progression from the logic of capitalism that Marx elucidates to Karatani's four modes, of which Marx's logic is now embedded, to an embedding of social logics in this very general idea of organization itself. Finally, Badiou, who is a philosopher, tells us not just about the logic of organization, but essentially the limits of logic itself, and connects this limit to what he calls the communist hypothesis. I won't go much into Badiou or Bogdanov's work in this video, but both have a profound influence on the basic categories we use at STP. To recap, the point of this stack is to allow us to rethink the conjuncture of problems we face today, as well as to recognize the novelty of strategies and tactics that are being invented by movements around the world. For the next portion of the video, I want to return to how we conceive of the bridge between Marx and Karatani. In the first place, why is there a need for such a bridge? Marx gives us the core features of a capitalist social world. This world is comprised of commodities as a measure of wealth, where exchange and production are regulated by what he calls the value form. Note that Marx was interested in critiquing the labor theory of value, not simply endorsing it, so sometimes we can distinguish his theory from the labor theory by calling it value form theory. Sometimes Marxists will point to the law of value, or Marx's law of value, as basically a straight reading and consequence of the labor theory of value, which reduces capitalism to a mode of allocating labor and products of labor in this very input-output fashion. However, this has its own problems, which many people have written about. For example, read Diane Nelson. What's more important and productive for us is to think about the logical development of the value form, which leads from commodities to money to capital, all the way to total social capital. One way to think of this is in reverse, that whatever appears to us as individuals in a capitalist society is already folded up in a way that makes its true logic hidden. A lot has been written on Marx's dialectics, what it predicts or how it explains things, but it's primarily a method for how to unfold social phenomena and look at its constituent parts, and to identify how these parts don't quite fit well together and are constantly producing fractures and mini crises. For example, Marx shows us that if you unfold wages, you'll see that they represent, in the employment contract, an apparent measure of time worked or units produced. But they are also, and more essentially, a measure of the value of the means of reproduction over time, what someone needs to subsist and get back to work the next day. And those two things, time worked and social reproduction, are not the same. When they align, it is generally an accident, and for some parts of the world, it does appear as if there's some kind of equivalence. When this equivalence appears, you get certain social phenomena like the petit bourgeois and its attendant ideologies, so that would be the folded up version of wages. But if you unfold it, you'll see a constant struggle, persistent unemployment, crises of overproduction, and so on. And Marx goes as far as to say that this process of unfolding gives us a big picture, the total view of capitalist relations and the competition between various individual capitals, although he conceives it more as uncovering mystifications that sustain the system. But besides giving us a description of the core features of capitalism, Marx also gave us a framework that can be extended. The limits of his own work have been continually challenged and updated by thinkers such as feminists, scholars from the periphery and colonized states, and so on. It's important to note that Marx was involved in various workers' struggles throughout his life, and his writings are linked to those experiences. So industrial capitalism and its problems are a major focus for him, while gender, race, colonialism, ecology, and so on lack emphasis. And a lot of work has been put into connecting these phenomena. Although I will say that Marx was definitely himself interested in all of these things. Karatani is part of this tradition of extending Marx, but using a very different methodology. Karatani draws from Marx's analysis of capitalism, but also from anthropology, specifically studies on early nomad communities, fixed settlement agriculture, the rise of the state and its territories, among others. He boils this down into 4 modes of exchange that characterize different social formations throughout history. Mode A is gift exchange. Mode B is plunder and redistribution. Mode C is commodity exchange. And he also posits a mode D, which is like a gift without countergift, inspired by what he calls isonomia, which is a kind of social equality found in historical forms of nomadism. It can be found at the periphery of empire and also in various religious traditions throughout history. Now, in each social formation, all 4 modes are in play, with one that is dominant. This gives us a social theory that is remarkably flexible in its analytical power, and it also retains a compatibility with the classic Marxian categories. What we've developed in the past few years in STP is a kind of theory bridge from Marx to Karatani that is distinct from Karatani's own account. Namely, we put forward a question to Karatani's work, which is, how is it that we come to know about various social formations? And our answer that we've developed over time is that social formations become intelligible through perturbations of its functioning. Basically, it is through politics and through confronting various antagonisms that the social logic, which we read literally as compatible with mathematical logic, is revealed. But if that's true, then you need forms of organization that are kind of paradoxical, in a sense. They have to be stable enough and compatible enough in the current social configuration to exist in the world, but they also have to be at a distance or at odds with one or more aspects of this configuration, enough to disturb it and cause new insights to emerge. They have to be both, in a sense, revolutionary and also made of the same stuff as the world. And this is what we call the organizational perspective. It is how to see not only the social world in terms of its logic and logical content, but also to see what is capable of interacting with that. What conditions have to be met to make it intelligible and real? Okay, as always, thanks for making it to the end of the video. If you haven't heard of us and you'd like to know more, please visit our website, read some of our writings, and we'd love it if you could attend one of our Monday meetings. See you later.